Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Modern Living with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. I am excited about my guest today. He is author Robert Bishop, and we are talking about a really great book that he has written. How human arrogance makes us susceptible to temptation. The name of the book, i-jetebais. Now, I know that is an interesting title, and there's no better person to explain what the book about is the author himself. So let's not have any further ado. Good morning, Robert. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me for the show today.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
I am so glad that you are on, that you'll be able to tell about this very intriguing book that you've written. But first, I have to ask you about the title, i-jetebais. Who is jetebais? Someone may not be familiar with that name.
Well, very few people would be familiar with it because I made it up. The jetebais is a fallen angel who, along with Lucifer, left heaven, and he now regrets it, and he's full of remorse, and he's on a mission to save humanity from Satan by exposing him, and to get all that done without Satan ever finding out what his plan is.
So what was your motivation, or what was your reason behind choosing to write this particular book?
Well, the idea actually began some 40 years ago in college when a creative writing professor asked us to write a dialogue. And almost in the instant that I finished writing the dialogue, I knew that it was going to be the prologue of a book. What I didn't know was that it was going to take me 40 years to put it all together. But but over the years, I had, I sort of in my head wrote the prologue and the epilogues. But it took me 2 years when I finally retired from teaching, and it took me 2 years to put the whole middle together. And boy, it was quite an adventure, I can tell you that. While I was writing it, though, actually even before I started, and I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but when you sit at the keyboard and you're ready to write, and then nothing happens. I just said a little prayer, and I said, God, let's get people talking about God again. And I don't care if they're arguing about you. I don't care, what their situation is. Let's just get people talking about that and morality and so forth. And, we really do need to do that because by and large, if you think about it, we've been given the instruction almost, don't talk about religion and politics. That's how you get the argument started. So it's true. We do need to talk about God a little bit more, and even if it's just for better understanding. I want to ask you about one particular part of the book or a phrasing that you have. Now, when most people think about like sin or evil or the devil as the work of Satan, but your book refers to it as Satan's legions and even names some of his followers. Do you feel that then that Satan does not work alone in his master plans, but it is more so that his legions or his cronies, the fellow demons are always helping out? Why do you mention it that way? Well, kind of under the heading of yin and yang, I guess. We know that there are those of us who are faithful people. We know that there are many of God's angels, and it just stands to reason that there would be, an army of angels on the other side as well. The Book of Revelation talks, about a battle in heaven. I don't know that ever happened. The book kind of indicates that, when the battle started, God finished it as soon as as quickly as he wanted to. But I don't believe Satan works alone. I think there are numerous
of his followers that kind of whisper in our ears. And it's that actually that whispering in our ears that gave birth to the name i-jetebais, because it's spelled i-jetebais, which in French means I kiss you. And that was just perfect for that character.
Well, listeners, we need to take a very short break, but when we come back, we will continue this conversation with author Robert Martin Bishop, and you can find, of course, his book at robertmartinbishop.net. We'll be back right after this.
Have you ever been stuck on the side of the road for hours waiting for a tow truck to get to you? Have you ever had to get towed to a local mechanic you don't know or trust? Motor Club of America is a different kind of roadside assistance that offers towing up to 100 miles to the shop of your choice. And they get you towed within 40 minutes of when you call. They also have emergency room, in-hospital coverage, and much more at very affordable rates. To find out more, go to motorclubofamerica.com/Elijah1. That's motorclubofamerica.com/ELIJA1 right now and experience a better way to do roadside assistance.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Modern Living with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. Today we are talking about how human arrogance makes us susceptible to temptation. My guest today is author Robert Martin Bishop, and he's written this intriguing book entitled i-jetebais. Now, if you want to pick up a copy of the book, of course, you can go to robertmartinbishop.net. It is available down there in the description of the show. Of course, if you're listening on an enhanced version, simply click and it will take you directly there. If not, simply highlight, right-click, and go. So, Robert, I love how your book really forces us to kind of think, to wrap our minds around certain concepts and to really give it a life so that we can follow along in the book. One point that you make is that, or one thing that you mention is the worst of the false prophets. Can you kind of touch on that just a little bit? I know you can't, give it totally away. You got to buy the book to get it all, folks. But can you kind of touch on that just a little bit for me?
Well, I think there are, or have been rather, many, many false prophets. And when a reader reads those passages that talk about not only what's going on in the world today, but what happened thousands of years ago, they'll be able to draw their own conclusions. But I don't think that's just something I want to give away right now.
Right. And I can understand that. Of course, I can understand that. Now, there are some points of your book that, of course, has or your overall book has a religious theme to it, and I think most people listening now have figured that out. But you talk about the Roman Catholic Church to a certain degree. So my question is, would someone have to be a religious person? Would someone have to be Catholic in particular to want to read your book or to be able to understand it? Or would you say that it is for the religious person and the non-religious person alike?
Oh, it's definitely for the religious and non-religious as well. There are certain things, certain aspects that might be more quickly understood by a person of faith because, they're kind of in it. But there's no more than, when somebody read the Da Vinci Code. You wouldn't have to be Catholic.
Right.
You wouldn't have to be Christian. You wouldn't have to be anything in order to read it and understand it and know what was happening in it. You once asked me in another interview if I'd had any pushback from people worrying about if I were attacking the Catholic Church at all. And, I want to say right out there, I have nothing but respect for the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic, but let's face it, it was the Roman Catholics who, essentially speaking, gave us the Bible. And the Pope, even though we're not, those of us who are not Catholic don't really follow the Pope, he's still the titular head of the Catholic Church, or rather of the Christian Church. So, no, I have nothing but respect for the Catholic Church.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And thank you so much for clearing that up for me. Um, there's one thing, and speaking of the Pope, near the end of the story, the Pope talks about or depicts Pope Francis as being influenced in some type of way, and kind of gets involved in the political arena. And I know that you can't kind of give it all away, but is there anything that you can kind of help the reader to understand about that particular portion of your book?
Sure. In the book, the Pope is being influenced by Satan himself, but that is not to say that Pope Francis, as we know him today, is being influenced by Satan himself. So let's remember that it is fiction. But let's also remember that we're all being whispered to at one time or another. The Pope is, after all, human. So it just stands to reason that he would, suffer the same temptations that
of course,
we all
as anyone would. That's right.
Sure. As far as the political spectrum, I look at it this way: if a parent does his job, really all we can do with our children is cross our fingers, and anything else that we can cross, that when they reach, the teen and late teen years, that they make good decisions. And if they don't make good decisions, if they make bad ones, at least let them learn from it and move on. I look at the clergy the same way. If a pastor or a priest or a rabbi is doing his job and shepherding his congregation and teaching what the Bible says, then let the people go out and take care of the politics. The clergy really, in my view, has no business commenting on politics.
And I can understand that. I've heard a lot of people say that as well. Now we are down to about the last minute of the show, so I want to just kind of open it up and ask you if there is a particular nugget of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners, or if there's a takeaway from the book. I leave it open to you. You have about a minute to share.
Well, as I said in the beginning, my real hope for the book is that people will read it and perhaps even gain faith from it. If you find your faith weakening, I think it's possible, because a couple of people have told me after they read it that their faith increased a great deal. And beyond that, I would hope that people would just sit back and think, there have been times in my life when, I did some stuff that I probably shouldn't have done, and that's just not me. And so how did that happen? Or you might see it in someone else. And then beyond that, let's just start talking about God and morality. Even if you don't believe that God exists, let's talk about right and wrong. Let's argue about it. Let's something about it, rather than the kind of nonsense that we all hear today on whatever news network you prefer. It doesn't make much difference. They're all none of them are talking about morality. None of them are talking about right and wrong. They're all arguing about, well, that isn't really wrong, or that isn't really right.
Right. Well, Robert, I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest here on the show today, and I have thoroughly enjoyed my interview with you.
And I with you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you so much for being on with me today. And of course, you guys know that I always give my shout outs to my listening countries, and I appreciate you so much. Coming in first is the great country of the United States of America. Number 2 is Canada. Number 3 is Hong Kong. Number 4 are the Philippines. And
last but not least, are our cousins across the pond in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.